separate those two out, either as separate recordings or have one at the tail end in case it gets too personal and, might be tempted to not publish that part.
Yeah, let's do the generic first, and I can make this 2 recordings. I just have to turn it off and then turn it back on again.
Right. I figured that'd be pretty straightforward. Or even, I've edited videos before and cut them, So
Oh yeah, and I can do that as well.
Yeah. So anyway, let me kind of recap a bit what I said in the email invitation there. One basic interest that I'm still not really clear on, and I find that when I'm not clear on something, there's a confusion. There's usually some gold underneath there if I dig far enough. So I'm kind of curious at poking at it. Is this whole question of, well, okay. The model I'm going by, and my question sort of presupposes that model, is that what's being pointed at when we talk about an individual self, is basically a collection of associated mental processes. Each of these processes centering on some story or idea about a me. And they're associated to each other. And the image I often have of it, I sometimes have it as kind of a hemp rope that's made up of strands of hemp, that hang together. And because they hang together, there is a sense in which we can speak of that as being one single rope, And similarly, I see sometimes the notion of an individual self as being very similar to that, as being a set of mentation processes which are associated, and that collection almost is what I wind up thinking I refer to when I refer to my individual self as such. If that model is at all realistic, then what arises for me, the question is, who the hell is doing the work? Because this rope thing doesn't really have any separate intention as far as I can tell.
Okay. I think we need to separate a couple of ideas here. The first is what you're describing, to me, is not self, it's persona.
Persona, okay. But it's kind of what we sometimes point to when we talk about, a separate self, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not what I experience as separate self.
Okay. So let's dig there, because that's probably the basic one there.
So for me, when I experience this, I can experience myself as the witness to, say, the persona as an individual. So individual I. When I stop, I experience myself inside. I see the I looking back. Now, at the same time, I can flip that. Just like one of those pictures where you look at it one way and it's a young woman, and you look at it the other way, it's an old lady. It's the same picture.
Right.
So I can flip that and experience the I as universal. I can experience what looks at my persona to be part of an entire whole and not as an individual, but I can also flip it and experience it as individual looking out at the persona. So when I think of, that's what I'm experiencing. Yes.
Are you experiencing? Okay, so let me push on that. Are you experiencing? What are you experiencing in either of those two cases? It seems to me that what you're describing, and what I also experience, is some sense of awareness, and then a story about either this being universal, the sense has no limitations and so forth, so I see it as universal.
Or but it's what's beyond the story.
Well, that's exactly the question.
The story is persona.
Right.
All the stories are persona. Right. So you have to, and this is hard, and some people say that you can't actually do this. It's like they say you can't think without words. Right. But this is not my experience. My experience is that here's the story, and I call it individual, I call it universal, I call it personality, and then there is that which witnesses,
Right.
which when, and language kind of fails here, but I will give it my best shot. When I experience I as that which witnesses, I can experience that both as unique, as a unique point looking out, and as connected with all the rest. And my sense is that it's all the same thing. It's just that shift in perspective.
I mean, that sounds right. And it's quite similar to, I think, the way I experience it also. But when I experience myself as the witness, even that seems like a story added on.
Well, when we talk about the witness, we are adding a story on it to be able to describe it.
Exactly.
When I experience it, there are no words.
Exactly.
There is no description. There is just the experience. Even talking about it now, I have to bracket it, even to describe it. I have to create a story to point at it. It's a Zen koan.
Right.
It is me going, okay, how can I point at this experience that has no words attached?
Okay, I think that's exactly right. And now, I guess, all right, let me put it this way. Is the experience that you're having when you're experiencing it as the universal self, as you would describe it, and the experience you're having when the experiences as of separates, or maybe not, separate self.
Not separate individuals.
Different experiences, or are they the same experiences with two different stories added to it?
They are different experiences in the same way that when you look at that picture, it is a different experience to see the young woman than it is to see the old lady.
Yeah.
And then there is this third experience where you realize that the old woman and the young lady are just a shift in perception.
Right.
And again, when you are in the experience, I have to step out of the experience just to be able to talk about it.
Right.
Because if I let myself go deeply into either pole of that field, and I think of it as a field, then there are no words.
Yeah.
There is no language that truly describes it. I have to step back into the realm of story even to talk about it with you.
Right.
And you have to step into the realm of story to listen to it. And then you take the story and use that as a pointer to the thing,
right,
to the experience itself.
And I guess what I'm asking is, okay, so I think we're pretty much agreed that in order to point, we have to have almost like a story. We have to have a finger to point with, which that finger is typically a story of some sort, right?
Yeah.
Or a concept. Now, is what's being pointed at with these two different story pointers the same thing? Now, in a sense, of course, the old lady and the young woman, it's the same picture, right? But it's almost like, unless we do a special effort, we see the picture differently, right? I mean, it's that's the Gestalt shift,
Yeah, we construct the picture differently.
Yeah, but it's still, if I put a flame on underneath that picture, it's that one picture that would burn up, whether it's seen as the old lady or seen as the young girl.
Yeah, you're making a significant mistake here.
Okay.
And it is one that is linguistic in nature because our language is object-oriented.
Right.
We talk about things. We talk about the I as a thing, and it is no thing. It is not an object.
Right.
So the witness, the I, whether it is experienced as universal or individual, is the subject to which objects are given.
Right.
And is not and it is not in itself an object.
Yeah, yeah, true enough.
And
But to
I
talk
realize
about
I realize that even in saying that, I'm not telling the truth about it. I'm just approximating my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody set this up as a weirdly fun game, isn't it?
Yeah.
But okay, but all right. Well, maybe that's enough then. I mean, I don't think I have any fundamental disagreement with what you just said. So
Yeah, and you even could, because I cannot tell the truth about this.
how is that?
I can only intimate.
Right.
But what I will say is that when you experience what I experience, the experience is the same.
Right.
The words may differ.
Right.
When we step back out of it and create the story around it to describe it, the stories may differ, but the experience is identical, because at the point of the universal, it's the same eye looking out.
Or at least that's the claim, and that's, I mean, that has actually curious.
I don't need to claim it. That's my experience of it. That is the truth that I know from direct gnosis, from experience. I have no need to claim it. I have no need to prove it. It doesn't matter what you believe about it. It's how I experience it.
Right.
I don't need your agreement on it.
True enough, but I'm wondering whether I want to go down this track at the moment or not.
It's an interesting but frustrating track.
It is, and it partly is that, because fundamentally, I think what you're saying is correct. Correct, at least corresponds to my experience. On the other hand,
or incorrect is it doesn't even enter into it, because what it is how well do I approximate my experience to the point where you can go, oh yeah, this is that. And it may be good, it may be bad. I have met people who live in this place and cannot describe it at all. And I know people who can describe the place but don't live there. So
yeah. Okay, well, let me push it a little bit further than on that one.
Okay.
We all there's a distinction between having the same qualitative experience and experiencing the same object, for lack of a better word, in the sense that you and I can both be seeing red, but we might be seeing a different, you might be seeing a red stool and I might be seeing a red car or something of that sort. But the experience of the redness is presumably the same for both of us. Yet what we're looking at might be different. The alternative view being that what we're looking at is always one and the same thing. Thing again is a bad word here, but
yeah.
And which of those two would you hold? Or is that a bad question?
Neither.
Yeah.
I hold that which witnesses the red is the same witness at a certain level or at a certain perspective, and individual witness at a slightly different perspective.
Right.
How we may witness it is not relevant. The fact that we witness it is the relevant part.
Yeah, but if I understand what you said, you're saying that the reason that you are certain that there is ultimately only one witness in the universal sense is based on your direct experience.
Yes. So we take a little side trip into Sufism here.
Okay.
The word in Arabic for certainty is yaqeen. And the Sufis say that there are 3 levels of this. The first is called ilm al-yaqeen, which is the certainty that you develop through education, through direct knowledge, through being taught by people who have some wisdom. This is the lowest level.
Right.
The second level is called ayn al-yaqeen. Ayn means eye. It is the certainty that you derive from direct experience of something. I see that when I drop 2 objects to the ground from the same height, they travel at the same speed regardless of their weight. A 1-pound ball and a 5-pound ball will touch the ground at the same time if they're released at the same moment. This is my direct experience. I don't have to argue that this is possible because I experience it as real. The third is called haq al-yaqeen. Haq means truth, the real, and it's also a name for the divine reality. And this is a direct experience from the divine to the divine of truth. And when I'm talking about this, I'm speaking from the point of view of haq al-yaqeen. It's like arguments don't matter. I have this experience. This experience does not change no matter how one tries to frame it. And it is not shakable because I've looked into the eyes of my teacher and seen me looking back, if that makes sense. That's the story part. But the experience of it is one being radiating through however it cares to manifest. And at the same time, I experience myself looking into the eyes of my teacher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is a direct experience given from the unity to me that literally there is nothing that you could say, no argument that you could make, no logical framework that you could put around it that can change that. You could say, it's all in your head. And I'd say, okay, that doesn't change it. You could say, you're just using words. And I would say, okay, it doesn't change it. And that's why it's called yaqeen, certainty, as opposed to just knowledge.
Yet that sounds to me to be true of any direct experience of phenomena. If you're experiencing...
No, it's not experience of phenomena, though. That's the thing.
But I mean, I know in this case it's not. But I mean, but this the same thing, the same sort of level of certainty would I would have of the experience of a pain in the area what I think of as my toe. You know. I mean,
that would be.
I still quite definitely experience it. You know.
Yeah, that will be ayn al-yaqeen. When I experience a pain in my body, I have the certainty that the pain is there because I experience it. This is at a different order than that. And even attempting to describe it doesn't quite make sense because you have to experience it yourself. Right. And this is why Zen koans don't make sense.
Right. And is the different order of it more than simply that you're in the case that we're talking about here, reflecting upon the observer rather than the observed? Or is there some further thing that makes the one, in a sense, holy and the other one not? You know, whatever that last one was. You know.
I experience it as being qualitatively different.
Okay.
I look at all 3 of these and I experience them as being qualitatively different one from the other.
Okay.
And haq al-yaqeen is a rare thing. You know, it's like we all wish we could have that. It takes real work to get yourself open enough to listen to that. Yeah, most people never get past the level of ilyam al-yaqin. You are certain about something because an authority tells you that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you trust the word of the authority.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and this gets to, I mean, one of the practices I gave to Kyle years ago is the phrase, "I do not defer."
Mm-hmm.
Because she was in the place of deferring to other people's experience, especially the experience of her teachers, even deferring to my experience rather than being certain of her own. So part of her learning in the beginning was to not defer to the teacher, to learn how to not defer to the teacher, to be able to experience her own truth without the filter of somebody else's belief.
Right. Yeah. And clearly that's what's needed, you know. And yeah, I'm thinking whether I've had anything that I could certify as being of that third type. I'm not at all sure I have, you know. But,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you have it, you are sure.
Yeah. Yeah. At the moment or afterwards as well?
Both.
Oh.
You could probably talk yourself out of it if you tried really hard, because we're clever monkeys. We can mess up anything.
Yeah.
But in the moment, especially, you are sure you have the direct experience. If you are attentive enough afterwards, you hold on to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I may have to chew on that some more, or look at it some more, whatever the case might be. But I mean, historically, there has been the debate as to whether the ultimate is one or many, you know, and
and the answer to this question, the question, is the ultimate one or many? The answer is yes.
Okay, yeah, for the reasons we discussed, because it's a, you know,
yeah.
flip through. Okay, so we're talking about Gestalt switches there. All right, so let's leave that thread at that point. And then now the question arises.
Now, is this where you want me to pause the recording?
No, actually, no. I'm still on the basics.
Okay. Okay.
Once I understand the basics, I might.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I find the basics actually almost more interesting and more, in a ways, more productive than my individual.
Yeah. Well, this is a truth of the martial arts, which is all the teaching is in the basics. The fancy stuff is just what you do so that your students will keep paying the dues. But the basics are where the truth is.
Yeah. That's certainly been my feeling about it. Yeah. So the next step in the basics is, to the degree that we have some clarity here what we mean by the self, both in the universal and individual sense. So I guess my question really then is, who is it that's doing the work? Right? I mean, who is that needs to have clarity? I mean, in some obvious sense, it's me, right? You know, but you know, what's unclear in my universe usually is my attempt to make a story or a model, and that's always somewhat doomed to failure, obviously. But I can make clearer or less clear models. But I'm really not that sure where is the agency here? Who is it that is being called to do the work? Who is it that's not paying attention and then turns to paying attention? I mean, aren't those just mental processes?
And the answer is yes. Who does the work? Your persona does the work.
So why the fuck do I care?
There is no reason to care.
Yeah.
This is the weird thing. Why should you want to awaken from the illusion that you've created for yourself? No reason. Just because.
The illusion I've created for myself. All right. So who is it that's created this illusion? Yeah.
Who do you see when you look in the mirror?
Well, in addition to my body, I see me.
Okay.
And
then let's take, because you like the Zen koan.
What, Glenn?
You like the Zen koan. So the classic Zen koan for this is, who is the Buddha who makes the grass green?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, to me, it is sort of a koan, really, you know. And I guess you know, because I keep flipping almost back and forth between feeling like I'm an agent with responsibilities and intentions that need to maybe be stronger and accomplish stuff, and one of those things is clarity and blah blah and blah blah, and a firmer sense of self, and the other one is, well, shit, you know, let's just kick back and have this. Why this? I mean, why? Well, it's not so much stressing, right? Yeah, at one point in life, it used to be stress, but it's like it's not why the stress anymore. But why bother in a sense? I mean, because obviously the universal self, the picture that can be seen one way or the other as the young lady or the old lady, is kind of the ultimate agent, right? And it's the one that both creates the confusion and tries to dig through the confusion. So what am I missing here? What am I missing that's... Because I do feel like I'm spinning on some weird little hamster wheel here that...
So, what are you missing? Now, it is the ego, the persona, that does the work. The persona is it is the active principle. And the witness is the passive principle.
That's interesting. I hadn't looked at it like that before.
The identification of the witness with the persona is the reconciling principle in this case.
That's interesting. No, I hadn't looked at it like that before. And of course, in a sense, it makes a hell of a lot of sense, because action in the world, of which the work is presumably a part, is always, in a sense, a phenomenal event, witnessed by consciousness, by whatever consciousness, whatever it should. So all activity becomes then part of the phenomenal world. And
yes,
what you're saying is that in a phenomenal world, we're only dealing with personas here.
Yeah.
And the subject that witnesses the phenomenal world is one that can be viewed either as a universal subject or from, well, how, from the perspective of the phenomenal world is seen as a witnessing subject, as an individual witnessing subject. I like that. That's good. That provides something chewable.
Yeah, it helps point at that which we are speaking of.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, here's the thing.
You're right, because I was trying to essentially assign agency to the witness or to the subject. And if I understand what you just said, agency is part of the phenomenal world. It's part of
Yes.
not part of the witness. Okay.
No. The only agency that the witness has is to identify or not identify.
Okay.
And there are two levels to that. One is to wake up in the phenomenal world, or as we like to say, wake up in the dream.
Yeah.
The other is to wake up from the phenomenal world, wake up from the dream.
Right.
The second, when that happens, the game is over. Even if you are still in the phenomenal world, it is not, you lose connection to it. You lose the ability to actually even interact in some ways. You find these guys in caves in the Himalayas just sitting in meditation. Their hair is growing, their fingernails are growing. They take a breath once every 2 days or something, so you know they're still alive, but they're just, there. They have left the playing field. And I think that of the two states, the one that is most efficacious for us is to be awake in the dream rather than from the dream.
And do you think it's, as some traditions suggest, do you think it's a passage in the sense of one can first depart from the world, then come back into it and awake in the world? Or is that initial departure not really a necessary step?
The initial departure is not a necessary step, and it's very hard to come back. Though it is definitely possible to come back from being awake from the dream. It requires more work than most people are willing to put into it. Because one of the things you confront is there is no meaning in the dream.
Right.
Being in the dream is utterly meaningless.
Right.
And yet you have, in order to return from that, you have to choose meaning. This is the secret of the bodhisattva vow. The bodhisattva is somebody who has seen awakening from the dream and chose to be in the dream to continue their work.
And that work that they're doing is one that gives them meaning to.
Yes, yeah, that work becomes the meaning. You say enlightenment for all sentient beings. That's the meaning. And that's a game. And the real bodhisattvas understand that it's a total game. It's like Parcheesi or Monopoly.
Right.
Sometimes chess, sometimes dodgeball, depending on how the game is being played. But
and of course, the persona that's being created in the phenomenal world, I see it itself as being essentially a work of art. As
it
being,
should be, yes.
Yeah, right.
It should very much be, yes. That I'm stealing that line from you. That's an exact perfect way of describing it.
Yeah.
And part of the work is to create a set of personas that are works of art, that aren't just all kludged together, Rube Goldberg machines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's an important thing. I experience that almost daily, because these days I talk and I work with 3, 4, 5 people a day, and for each person I have to shift persona. I have to be the quality of teacher that they need in that moment, without ever identifying with that. So I can go from the martial artist to the psychologist to the Sufi to the shaman to whatever is needed, and play that persona to the hilt while still being me looking out through that persona's eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And that shifting exercise that you're doing there is itself, I think, an incredibly valuable exercise. I mean,
because it keeps me from taking anything about myself seriously.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah, I mean, of course, in a sense, that was a whole existentialist point. There isn't an essence we started. We create an essential self, out of existence. But yeah, good point. Okay, so we have the only action that the witness at the witness level is engaging is identifying and disidentifying, presumably. So
the witness either says, I am that, or the witness experiences itself as, that is an object given to me to witness.
Exactly. So how does the phenomenal self, the persona's activity, contribute to, on the one hand, the identification, on the other hand, the disidentification? Is it purely an activity?
That's a very good question. And here's the thing that they don't tell you. It is not the witness that wakes up.
Right.
It is the persona that wakes up.
Exactly.
When the persona sleeps, it is having violent, crazy dreams. When the persona wakes up, it becomes quiet. And when it becomes quiet, the witness can go, oh, that's an object. Otherwise, it's like being in a really, here's an example. When the movie Avatar came out, I saw it in IMAX, and I was up really close to the screen, and it was utterly immersive. For that time, I felt like I was in that world. And that's because there was all of this stuff going on. I was entertained. But there came a point where I went, oh, wait a second, this is just a movie. And I could step back from it. And it's sort of like that. In a quiet moment, the witness can disidentify from the persona. But when the persona is asleep and very, very active, it's very hard to do that. Not impossible, but hard. So what wakes up is the machine. What wakes up is the persona.
See, now that strikes me at one level as being absolutely correct. At least corresponds to very much to.
Yeah, you have experienced this.
Right.
I have no doubt about that. So you're at the level of at least Ayn al-Yaqin about this. Yeah. Direct personal experience.
But now, how does that jive? But I thought, either in one of your talks or one of our earlier discussions, that we had almost defined the asleep state as a state of being identified with objects.
Yeah.
But now we just said half an hour ago that the one that identifies is the witness.
Yeah, I'm giving you the secret stuff here.
All right.
This is the stuff that I don't talk about in public, because the public goes, ah. Yeah, it is a further clarification, or it is a different way of talking about this.
Okay. So still fundamentally, though, it's the witness that's doing identifying or disidentifying. Right?
The witness is the only thing that's real.
Right. And, okay. Real to me sometimes has the same ambiguities as love and capitalism and so forth. I'm not exactly sure that we all...
Well, it's very simple. When you are experiencing yourself as witness, if you turn reflexively and look back on yourself, you discover that it is infinite. There is no end to it. Things that have an end are not real.
Okay.
The experience of self as witness is eternal. That's part of its universal nature. Even when the sense of I as individual dissolves back into the universal is still there. Therefore, the witness is what is real. The witness is true.
Right. Okay.
Persona, because it is mutable, changeable, can dissolve with the body, is not real in the same sense.
Okay. I understand that sense of real, but
Yeah.
as unchangeable.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to pull another string, but which is, I mean, I certainly have had this experience of looking backwards and seeing that there are no limitation in space or time, or at least having that experience of no limitation in space and time. Whether that, it doesn't give me the same degree of certainty, I guess it gives to you, that that's veridical. Because that's still a judgment I'm making to say, okay, even though I'm not experiencing...
If you are making it at the level of language, it's a judgment. If you are directly experiencing it above the level of linguistic abstraction, it's real.
Yeah, but... Your real dog is announcing himself.
Yes, the real dog. He is telling all other dogs out there that this is not their turf.
All right. All right. Which could easily lead us off into another strand.
To the question of, does a dog have Buddha nature?
Well, there is that one. Yes, there is that one. But there's also the question of how do you and I distinguish ourselves? Is it just because of the body and associated mentations to these bodies?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. There is a place, and again, I'm using words, and the words are not true because it's not a place, but I have to say it as there is a place that you can be in where you are looking out through all the eyes, where you have the direct experience of you as you and you as them is the same experience.
Okay.
And to me, the closest way that I can describe it is, and this is all story again, sitting with my fellow seekers and all of us hitting this state and opening our eyes at the same time and looking at each other and seeing ourselves looking back. And all of us have this experience. And it's like, there is no doubt after that. But again, I'm talking at the level of story. I'm making this up because it's the only way I can abstract it.
No, that's cool. I mean, we understand that. We understand stories and stories, and they're not...
Yeah, I'm mostly saying that for anybody else who's listening to this.
Gotcha, yeah. Gotcha,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's... but yeah, okay. And I think fundamentally I have not had that strong experience of that, which is probably why I'm waffling on the subject here.
Yeah. I recommend really powerful drugs.
Well,
not really, but yeah, it works for some people. I know a lot of people who have done ayahuasca and have had that kind of experience.
Yeah, I've never done ayahuasca. I have had some pretty profound, quote unquote, experiences on LSD, but I've probably I've been more of a solo person than anything else. Even my LSD trips
Yeah.
were solo trips, which, except for afterwards, Oh, okay, well, that's a good point. Afterwards, talking to people when you start to come down, there is that sense of, good. There is that sense of shared communion, shared oneness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. You're reminding me of stuff here now. Which
Yeah,
actually,
there you go. See,
yeah,
you have the echoes of this in your own self.
actually, that's weird. That brings grief charges to me.
Yeah. And yet it might set your feet on a very interesting path.
Yeah, but I've been shuffling along that path for a long time. My time's beginning to run out, so.
Yeah, well, we have to face that we cannot be leisurely about this.
Yeah, but there's also something counterproductive about forcing it, at least
Yeah, no, you don't force it. You just get up off your lazy butt and do the work, as my teacher used to say to me.
Yeah. Okay. Whew. All right. And I guess really, why are we doing all this shit? Presumably because
we want to.
Yeah,
we are doing all of this shit because we're doing all of this shit. There is no meaning. It just is.
Right.
It's like, why do you breathe? Because we breathe.
We want to give it a profound meaning. We are at the core of the truth, and the truth shall set us free, right?
And you can do that. But every truth you create is the truth you create. If it starts from the direct experience, then you create interesting truths.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we are the meaning-making organs of the universe, as far as I can tell. Dogs, for as wonderful as they are, the only meaning they make is, give me a treat. Let me go outside. Let me sleep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, humans have been often described as the storytellers.
Yes. Yeah.
And that meaning that we think we see is most used time a story of some sort, which presumably is more or less.
All description of meaning is a story.
Yeah.
As long as you remember that, then you're okay. The moment you start believing your own press, as they say, is when you get in trouble.
All description of meaning is a story? Or
all description of meaning
itself is a story? In other words, are we saying that there essentially is, in all that is there also meaning, or is that something intrinsically, or is it something that we need to, as sentient beings or as humans, create in order for it to be there?
There is one core meaning, as far as I can tell, that every human being is capable of getting to. And basically, you have to do the Cartesian meditations to get there.
Okay.
Or some variation of that, Eastern or Western. You have to go and do Ramana's who am I practice, or you have to do what is true, or what can I know, or any of those myriad practices that point you to the one ultimate truth of reality. And then everything stems from that one experience. All other meaning is thrown together from that one experience.
Would you call that experience itself, though? Well, that's a linguistic question, but never mind.
Yeah, that's a problem, is it is a linguistic question.
And it's not, at least in my case, it's not pointing to anything real here. So it's probably not worth pursuing. I mean, we have this experience of seeing the unity of Atman and Brahman, basically. And
Yeah.
and we have the experience of, as personas, creating works of art. Some of them are dramas, right? Some of those
Yes.
are personas, you know. And we might as well be good at it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In the last part of my invitation email to you, I said, okay, what does it really matter of clearly revealing what's already there, already always there, unchanging, and also already ever there as a changing phenomena, and being at ease with both and not engaging in fixing either one. And I guess that's the other attitude that I'm sometimes tempted by, you know.
Yeah.
Sit back, enjoy the show for whatever it is, and there's no need to fix anything.
No.
But
And
there is, right? Because there's
Yeah.
injustice in the world, and there's confusion in the mind, and all that shit. You know?
Yeah, and all of that is completely and utterly illusionary. Once you realize that, then you are free to fix all of the injustice that you like, because that's the game.
Yeah.
That's the engagement in the world. That's the bodhisattva vow, is enlightenment for all beings. And enlightenment may have to do with social justice from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Enlightenment may have to do with feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, there's no meaning in it at that level.
Right.
So you have to make it.
Which,
I myself,
go ahead.
yeah, I myself find that my desire is to engage the world at that level at a certain extent. To me, things like social justice are important. Equality and fairness and all of that kind of thing strike me as an elegant idea, as aesthetically pleasing.
Mm. Yeah.
I see the injustice as ugly, and I want to paint it over with something nicer.
Yeah. But see,
so I do.
That points to something really quite important, though. What it's pointing to is that our existence as persona is really an existence as artists, as engaged in this creative endeavor, which is fundamentally an artistic endeavor.
I think that is, by and large, completely accurate. Yeah.
And that too brings an interesting charge to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes feel these energies rising. Often they're associated with some griefiness to it. And this one, again, is arising like that. Huh. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we may be getting close to then taking a look at my more personal sort of stories here.
Yeah, we may have to save that for next time, because I just looked at the time and we're almost out of time.
Yeah, okay.
But we're having fun, and I think that this is a great talk. And with your permission, I'm going to add it to the Conference of the Greybeards.
Please do. And I'll have my grandkids look at it some years from now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. One way to leave a legacy, I guess,
Yeah.
And I mean, the personal stuff that I do eventually want to look at, of course it may dissolve by the time we get to it, is the constraints I feel about being this artist. There's some sort of self-imposed but fairly obvious sort of constraints or enclosures, And I kind of can imagine where they come from historically and all that shit. You know, I mean, I think I had some of that shit when I was in the womb, and because my mom's adrenaline hormones must have been going weird because this was the middle of the fucking war, you know, and I'm not at all sure I wanted to come out. but there is this sense of being enclosed in a protective layer that is also confining, you know, and that. Through, you know. But that's obviously a longer topic, you know, and so it's
yes,
be worth.
Yeah, and that's something that we might want to keep private.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was suggesting.
Yeah,
this might be a separate part of this, you know. Okay, all right. Well, here we are.
Here we are, and I'm going to stop the recording.